From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today we're going to explore how companies can plan, launch, and realize real value from strategic customer experience projects, one of the hottest topics we deal with right now. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me today in the studio is Ryan Hollenbeck. Ryan is the CMO for Verint. Verint, if you're not familiar, helps organizations address two areas of the actionable intelligence market. In my opinion, they actually define the actionable intelligence market, which is customer engagement and cyber intelligence. So they do this by capturing large amounts of information from numerous data types, gleaning insights from the info, and then leveraging that, resulting in intelligence. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So Ryan and I are going to spend some time today talking about this hot topic. If you're watching or you're listening out there and you don't want to miss a show, I'd like you to head to the Apple App Store. When you get there, I want you to search for Sales Benchmark Index. When you see that, I want you to download the app. And then you can get the notifications that can bring you our content on your commute, on your travel, or while you work out. So Ryan, mega trend of customer experience. You and I are going to chat about this. I consider you and Verint uniquely qualified to chat about this topic. But before we jump into it, I'd love for you just to give a little background about how you ended up where you are and sort of your road to the top, if you will, because you're on the bleeding edge of customer experience.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. And for us, Verint's a company, as you said in the opening, that's really founded around this whole actionable intelligence concept. Yeah. And it was really the vision of our founder and CEO that really came up with that actionable intelligence vision, and it's still very relevant today. In fact, one could argue is more relevant today with AI and machine learning and all the things that everyone's talking about. And for me, I came into the Verint company, through an acquisition actually, and it's been a great ride. I mean, Verint is the thing about Verint that I always say is we've got amazing technology, but what really makes us different is our people and our customers and how we treat our customers.
Yeah, and how, if I'm a viewer or a listener of this show, so I'm probably a CEO, Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, or private equity investor, where would I have interacted with Verint's solution or technology? Where might I be bumping into you?
Yeah, almost everywhere. It's a great question because if you think about any financial institution inside of a branch bank, when you call the call center and you're interacting with an agent, you're interacting with Verint technology every day. You see us in security environments and big retail stores and other financial institutions. And so, and then of course we've got a lot of public sector and government customers as well. So day to day, you'd actually be surprised. People interact with the Verint brand. Yeah, how often? They may not know necessarily that that's what's happening with the video technology and the audio technology and the customer experience capabilities that we have.
As basic as you told me last night over dinner that this call is being monitored for quality assurance, and while you don't want people necessarily to think about that, we always think about sort of, that's how I got to know you guys, right? And I know you do much more than that, but it's sort of like when people say SBI, oh yeah, sales guys. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like a foundational thing, isn't it?
And then you build out. We're much more.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good way to think about it.
So other than the fact that Ryan and I are both sporting the same haircut, and it's truly the only way to go, whether you choose to go there or God puts you there with what we have, we're also going to talk about this mega trend of customer experience that's pummeling the world of B2B. And in my opinion, I think it's causing a lot of challenge for companies as they think about shifting in this new model. So think about your changing buyer. They want to be served differently. They want a less intrusive, they want a more responsive provider. They also want less friction. So buyers in the enterprise are now insisting that their providers incorporate many of the features and functions that you see in a B2C online retail environment in B2B. If that was not confusing enough, boards and other investors see this massive trend. They look at digitization, this big D word, but they don't know how to operationalize it at the B2B level. So because of this, the challenge of the go-to-market engine, what does marketing do? What does sales do? Do I need an experience officer? How does this work? Ryan and I are going to unpack that. So this next segment, Ryan and I are going to talk about the customer view. And I think most people are now used to, and Ryan, you and I talked about this before, customer journey, not a new term. Right? People talk about customer journey. However, it means different things to different people, number one. Number two, from where we sit, we see this whole concept, depending on if you're a product business or a service business, where you have what we call episodes or certain sort of things you can normalize around that typically reflect the way a customer might ebb and flow inside your ecosystem. So I guess for this section, let's talk a little bit about listening paths from your purview, and what have you seen, what have you evolved?
Yeah, well, we think that the customer journey is absolutely critical, but it's more holistic than just the buyer's journey. Buyer's journey is still very important, and we think of that, if you think about it from the standpoint of the whole customer journey, it's really a starting point in terms of expressing interest in the Verint brand or whatever organization that you work with when you're running your customer experience program. And then from there, it's actually engaging with the sales force. And from there, it's actually engaging in a purchase. And then it's going through an implementation and an onboarding process and through to support and renewals. That's more of a comprehensive journey. And in order to really understand that journey, you're going to have all of these different signals where the customer is sending signals to you. We think of an annualized customer experience survey as table stakes. That's where we get a lot of our data on what customers think. But signals in all these other social channels and when they're interacting with support and what's happening in implementations, all these different signals throughout that customer lifecycle are critical.
So how do you, the separation between the customer journey, the buyer journey, that's been around. You spoke about how you see it. Let's take that down one level. I am a CRO listening to this show, standing in line at the airport to get through security. I'm chasing my number. It's a series of 90-day sprints, and I'm just trying to keep my job. Academically, I'm like, God, that sounds great. I can't even think about how to implement this and drag it down to my sales team that's carrying a quota. Can you connect those for our, kind of core listener?
Yeah, the way I think of it is buyers are customers too. And when you reflect on it and you think about what's the likelihood, our data would suggest that customers who are very satisfied, very highly ranked in we have our own champions index, we call it. So if you're a champion or an all-star, which is the top of our champions index, you're 12 times more likely to repurchase from the Verint company. So if I'm a seller and I understand that as part of what's actually happening, what we do is we take that champions index and we embed it into our Salesforce automation system. So every seller, when they're on the road and they're actually in the airport, as you just described, they can know the sentiment of that customer right from their mobile device or when they log into the Salesforce instance.
That is next level. Champions index.
Yeah.
Man. Who came up with that?
Well, as you would expect, Nancy Port, our customer experience leader.
Let Nancy know that a bald guy who in Dallas might be taking that, but I will cite her in the next research report.
It's good.
That is dynamite. And the fact that you have that closed loop coming back in through Salesforce automation is terrific.
Yeah.
Man, that's wonderful. Okay, so last question on this section, and maybe you and Nancy have some opinions. How do you think about, you have different customer journeys, you have different customer types, you have a wide product portfolio at Verint, and most companies do, especially when they've been a combination of acquisitions and obviously organic growth. So how many journeys, how many listening paths, how do you not turn this into a spaghetti plate where everybody goes, it's academically interesting, but I actually don't know what to do with it?
Right. That's a critical point, is that you do have to establish a baseline overall journey. Like I was saying earlier, starting with even expressing interest in the brand and going through a sales cycle and through implementations and support and all the way through to renewals if you're a software company. And so there's steps throughout that. So you do need that baseline.
Yep.
But I think you bring up an important point here, Matt, because you have to, there are some nuances here. For example, onboarding itself, effectively onboarding a customer, you need a journey map just for that.
Yeah.
What's it like to onboard a customer? We found that in our European operations, for example, where we have more channel business, that it was really important to bring in the channel perspective. That created a slightly different nuance to the journey map. Same was true, we're a big enterprise software company, but we also do a lot with small to medium-sized businesses. And so our SMB part of the business also had some nuances to the journey map. So I think you do need the baseline and the overall journey and what's it like to be a Verint customer. But then I think unpacking that and putting it in the context of specific regions or buyers is also important.
If we were normalizing kind of the baseline journey map and thought about critical touch points, or what I call sort of moments of inflection where you just got to get them right, as opposed to sort of sub moments that but there's certain inflection points. Are we talking about 3 dozen? Are we talking about 70? What's a way that
No, we look at it as, certain key inflection points they're kind of obvious, actually. It's during an implementation, for example. Yeah. It's during a buying process and when negotiations take place and you're engaging not only with your account executive, but also with our legal team and the legal team of the potential buyer. That's another pivotal moment. Support is critical as well. Upgrades and then renewals. So each of these have very specific feedback that you need to be in front of it and on top of it, or else you're kind of on your back foot as you try to respond.
So if you're looking for the takeaway in segment 2, there's many of them. One of the ones I would have, many of you are technology companies that listen and watch the show. If you heard the way Ryan articulated upgrades, renewals, prospective new buyer, et cetera, sort of dimension the 4 or 5 sort of core use cases, there's a difference. SMB versus enterprise customer, channel versus direct. So the question you should be asking yourself right now is, A, if we've made the journey into customer experience, is it a program, not a project? B, have we dimensioned what our sort of core journey maps look like from end to end, and then start to get into some level of specificity so the entire organization, not just sales, can use it. So, Ryan, this was fantastic. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
This was really, really good. Yeah. All right. So for those of you that just listened and watched, if you got no value out of this show, you should eliminate ever listening or watching my show again, because I got nothing else. This is one of the top ones that we've done. If I wrap this up in a bow, I would say this. Every executive facing a customer experience challenge, if they watch this show, they'd be able to understand, I think, a mindset shift, but also some really actionable skill set shifts that you can take away from Ryan and what the team at Verint have done. So, as always, I appreciate your eyes and your ears. You have a choice on where you put them. And until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.